Before I tell you this story, let me start with a question. What if one ordinary workday suddenly turned into a nightmare you never saw coming? Stay with me until the end, because this experience changed my life forever. And before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what your profession is and whether you've ever had strange or unsettling situations at work. You're not alone, even if it feels that way sometimes. My name doesn't really matter anymore. What matters is what happened. For several years, I worked as a professional model. It was a serious job for me, not just a hobby. I traveled, worked with agencies, met creative people, and built a reputation I was proud of. I posed for different brands, including clothing and intimate apparel companies. The photos were confident and stylish, meant for advertising, not scandal. Everything was done professionally with teams, lights, schedules, and clear expectations. At least, that's what I believed. At first, my career felt like a dream. I liked the discipline, the planning, and the feeling that I was creating something visual and powerful. I knew modeling wasn't easy, especially as a woman. You learn quickly that your image is your business card. I was careful, or at least I thought I was. I trusted people who came recommended. I believed that professionalism protected me. Then, one evening, after a long day, I received a strange message from someone I barely knew. It was vague and awkward. They asked if I knew where my pictures were being shared online. I laughed it off at first. Models expect their work to appear on brand websites or social media. That's normal. But something about the tone bothered me. There was an uneasiness I couldn't explain. I asked for clarification. A few minutes later, I received a link. I didn't open it right away. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling a tightness in my chest. Something told me this wasn't normal. When I finally clicked, my hands started shaking. The website was clearly not a professional platform. My photos were there, mixed with content I had never agreed to be part of. My name wasn't used, but I recognized myself instantly. These were images from legitimate photo sessions, edited and presented in a way that completely changed their meaning. I felt exposed, betrayed, and confused all at once. I kept scrolling, hoping it was a mistake, a coincidence, anything, but it wasn't just one photo. There were many. Some were altered, some were cropped. None of them represented what I had agreed to. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I felt like the ground under me had disappeared. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. How did this happen, and who did this to me? The next morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling, like a storm was sitting on my chest. I knew I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. I made coffee I barely touched and opened my laptop. I started researching, carefully at first, then obsessively. I searched for similar images, similar sites, anything that could explain how my photos ended up there. What I discovered made everything worse. My images weren't the only ones. There were dozens of women, different faces, different styles, but the same pattern. Professional photos taken in studios, suddenly repurposed and sold on a site none of us had agreed to. That's when the truth started to form in my mind, and I didn't want to accept it. I recognized the background in some of the photos, the lighting style, the angles. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly who had taken those pictures, a photographer I had worked with recently. He wasn't famous, but he was respected enough, calm, friendly, always talking about art and trust. He had made me feel safe during the shoot, explaining everything, showing previews, acting professional. Now, that memory felt fake, like a scene from a movie that suddenly changes meaning when you know the ending. I checked my contract. Or rather, what passed for one, emails, messages, basic agreements, nothing detailed enough, nothing strong enough. I felt foolish, angry at him, but also angry at myself. How could I be so careful in some areas and so careless in others? I decided to confront him, not out of courage, but because I needed answers. I needed to hear him deny it. I needed this nightmare to end. I messaged him, keeping my words neutral, professional. I told him I had found my images on a website and wanted to understand how that happened. His reply came quickly, too quickly. He didn't sound surprised, he sounded annoyed. He said I was overreacting, that it was part of the industry, that everyone did it. My hands were shaking again, but this time from anger. I told him clearly that I had never agreed to that use of my images, that I wanted them taken down immediately. That's when his tone changed. The friendly photographer disappeared. In his place was someone cold and calculated. He sent me images I had never seen before, images that looked like me but weren't real. They were manipulated, designed to look convincing. My face, my body shape, but situations I had never been in. My mind went blank. I felt dizzy. He told me that if I caused trouble, these images would be sent to people I knew, family, colleagues, brands. He said they would learn who I really was. That sentence echoed in my head. I couldn't breathe. My reputation meant everything to me. Years of work, discipline, and effort could disappear in a moment. I felt trapped, cornered by someone who knew exactly how to hurt me without touching me at all. After that conversation, I stopped functioning like a normal person. I went through the motions of daily life, but inside, I was unraveling. Every notification made my heart jump. Every unknown number felt like a threat. I imagined messages being sent, rumors spreading, doors closing before I even reached them. I didn't tell anyone, not my family, not my coworkers. I was ashamed, even though I had done nothing wrong. Shame has a strange way of convincing you that silence is safer. I told myself I could handle it alone, that I just needed time to think. The stress followed me everywhere. I couldn't focus, I couldn't sleep. When I did sleep, I dreamed of losing everything. I started numbing myself in unhealthy ways. One drink turned into several. Evenings blurred together. I told myself it was temporary, just to calm my nerves, but the relief never lasted. I kept replaying his words in my head. I imagined worst-case scenarios, headlines, whispered conversations, people looking at me differently. The fear wasn't just about the images, it was about losing control over my own story. Days passed, then weeks. The website was still there. The images were still there. He hadn't contacted me again, which somehow made it worse. The silence felt like pressure building before an explosion. One night, I reached a breaking point. I sat on the floor of my apartment, phone in my hand, unable to stop crying. I realized I couldn't keep carrying this alone. I needed help, even if it meant facing my fear. I called my closest friend. At first, I'd tried to keep it vague, but she heard it in my voice. She didn't let me hide. She listened without interrupting as everything spilled out. The modeling, the photos, the site, the threats. By the time I finished, I felt exhausted but strangely lighter. She didn't blame me. She didn't question my choices. She was angry, but not at me. She told me something I hadn't allowed myself to believe. This was not my fault. She insisted we take action, real action, not more messages, not more fear. She said silence only protected him. I argued at first. I was scared, but she stayed firm, calm, supportive. She reminded me that intimidation only works when it's hidden. The next day, she went with me to report everything. I brought screenshots, messages, links, dates. My hands were shaking, but I walked in anyway. Speaking the truth out loud felt terrifying, but also powerful. For the first time since this began, I felt like I wasn't alone in the dark anymore. The investigation didn't move as fast as movies make it seem, but it moved, and that mattered. The authorities took the case seriously. They had seen similar situations before, which was both comforting and disturbing. Comforting because I wasn't alone, disturbing because this pattern existed at all. They traced accounts, transactions, and servers. What they uncovered was worse than I imagined. There were many victims, women from different cities, different backgrounds, all connected by the same photographer. He had built a hidden system, quietly profiting from betrayal. Each discovery made me angrier, but also more determined. When he was finally confronted, his confidence collapsed. The threats meant nothing anymore. The fake images were exposed for what they were: fabrications, tools of control. Watching his power disappear was surreal. I didn't feel joy, I felt relief. The legal process took time, patience, and emotional energy. Some days I wanted to forget everything and move on, but I stayed, for myself and for the others who might never know they were affected. Every statement, every detail felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. During this time, I learned how important documentation is: contracts, clear terms, understanding your rights. Things that once felt boring suddenly felt essential. I also learned how dangerous misplaced trust can be, especially in creative industries where informality is common. My career didn't end. It paused, bent, changed shape. Some opportunities disappeared. Others appeared unexpectedly. People who mattered stayed. People who judged without facts faded away. I learned that reputation isn't about perfection, it's about truth and resilience. I also learned the value of speaking up. Fear thrives in silence, but it weakens when exposed. Telling my story didn't make me weak, it made me stronger. It reminded me that control belongs to those who refuse to be quiet. Today, I work differently. I ask more questions, I read every line, I trust my instincts. If something feels off, I walk away. No opportunity is worth your safety or peace of mind. What happened to me was painful, but it taught me something I'll carry forever. Protect yourself, verify who you work with, put everything in writing, and never believe that intimidation means the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of taking your power back. Looking back now, I see that this story isn't just about modeling or photography. It's about boundaries, trust, and the courage to act when those boundaries are crossed. Many people think situations like this only happen to others, to someone careless or naive. That's not true. It can happen to anyone. If you're watching this and thinking, "I'd know better," I hope you're right. But I also hope you remember that professionalism isn't just talent and experience. It's protection. It's asking uncomfortable questions. It's saying no when something feels wrong, even if it costs you. I share this story not to scare you, but to remind you that your work, your image, and your name matter. No matter what industry you're in, there are people who may try to take advantage of trust. Awareness is your first defense. I'm grateful for the friend who refused to let me stay silent, for the people who listened, for the systems that worked when I finally stepped forward, and most of all, I'm grateful to myself for choosing action over fear. If you've ever faced something strange or unsettling at work, know that you're not weak for being affected by it. You're human, and asking for help is not failure, it's strength. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please subscribe, share your profession in the comments, and tell us if you've ever experienced something unusual at work. Your story might help someone else feel less alone.